TJ McLaughlin here, talking about organics. Organics? What's organics? Organic politics. What's that? Well, for one thing, it's genuine revolution. It's genuinely revolutionary. Now, I think a revolution is something that never was before. Something totally different than anything ever in the past. It's totally, absolutely new. A lot of people today, they call themselves revolutionaries if they're socialists. I'm sorry, it's not revolutionary. It was revolutionary over, about 100 years ago. 1916, I think it was, in Russia. They overthrew the Tsar and they installed a Marxist-Leninist regime. That was new. That was revolutionary. But it no longer is. It's no longer a revolution to say you're a socialist or to install a socialism. It's a change if you're like in a total capitalistic country and you install a totally socialist regime. You know, it's a change. It's a change, but it's nothing new. Socialism is not revolution. It's not a revolution as far as something new. So, organic politics. It's really bringing knowledge into the design of our social systems. Bringing knowledge of ourselves, knowledge of the nature of things. The knowledge of how things work. Wow. Who would have thought it? The knowledge of how things work. Now you have to admit our social systems are not working that well. And because we're all kind of obsessed with these ideologies about isms and how we got to get these isms in there. This ism or that ism. And we just forget about, or we don't think about how things work. How do you design something so it works? Or you look at how other things work, and maybe you can take some of that knowledge and bring it into our social systems and have things maybe work. Now, one thing, you have to break things down. Let's break things down. Let's break it all down. Now, I'm going to tell you something now that I think you might know, but you don't know that you know it, because it's hiding in plain sight. I read this novel. I read one of the best novels I've ever read, called The Eighth Day by Thornton Wilder, and one of his lines was, "We all know more than we know we know." And I think you might know this, or this might sound familiar to you. No, it won't sound familiar. It's going to sound unfamiliar. It's going to sound, well, you never heard it before, so it's going to sound unfamiliar, but it might click something in your mind, and you say, oh yeah, okay. Anyway, here it is. For every social system that ever was and ever will be, there is one fundamental dynamic that every social system that ever was and ever will be has in common. One basic dynamic. And that is self-interest, collective interest. Self-interest / collective interest. That's one dynamic. That's one dynamic. And now, wait a minute. Self-interest and collective interest? Aren't they diametrically opposed? Aren't they like that? No, like that. Now, I'll explain. Let me explain. Self-interest. We think of self-interest, and we think that I know we all operate out of self-interest, right? And this is what there was this philosopher, Hobbes, way back. I don't know exactly when he was alive. He was a Scottish philosopher, and he had this idea about our primitive existence, the primitive existence of humankind. And he imagined that it would be a total competition. Everybody against everybody else. Every man against every man. Total competition. Life is short and brutish and nasty. Totally competitive. Because he thought, well, you look around these the civilizations, and you see that people are pretty much out for themselves, and without some sort of Leviathan. He called it a Leviathan, some sort of authoritarian structure imposing order, law and order on these savage humans, that they would just be these lone individuals running around killing each other over whatever resources are there. Now we know that's not true. We've seen primitive tribes in New Guinea and the Amazon jungle. Tribes, they formed tribes. How did they do this? How is it possible? With no Leviathan, no government structure to tell them how to behave. Well, how did they form these organized tribes, groups of hunter-gatherers and tribes? How did they form them? When they were just operating on their own self-interest, out for themselves. Well, what formed their tribes was self-interest. Self-interest. How could that be? Well, what was their self-interest? Self-interest was to survive. And how do you survive? In the jungle, in the wild. Well, you belong to a group. It would be in your self-interest to belong to a group. That's how you would survive. On your own, your chances of survival out there in the jungle, in the wild, not very good. In a group, your chances are exponentially greater for survival. And so that was it. Self-interest. Out of your own self-interest, you belong to a group. You're part of a group. Self-interest creates the collective interest. Self-interest, collective interest. The tribe, the collective, serves your own self-interest for survival. And it's not just belonging to the tribe, but contributing to that tribe's harmony. Because the more harmonious a tribe, the more chances it has to survive, and the more chances you have to survive as an individual. So, collective interest forms the collective. And the Leviathan in the wild, in the jungle, so to speak, was the natural world, nature. Nature dictated what you had to do in order to survive. One of those things is to form a collective, to be part of a group, a tribe, a collective. So, self-interest, collective interest. See? Not that. No. So, now you can see that today in our own civilizations for today. we don't think of survival that much. We don't think of like, that's not really on our minds, survival. I'm going to survive. In a way it is, because you have to make money. That's how you survive. You have to make money. How do you make money? Well, one way is to get a job. What does that mean? You go out, you find a job, you become part of a company, a collective. You become part of that collective. You contribute to that collective's ability to survive, ability to do its business, to make money, make profits. Contribute to that, contribute to the organization, and you're rewarded, your self-interest is rewarded with a paycheck. So you have self-interest, collective interest. So, what do we all want? What do you want? What do I want? What do we all want? What does everybody want? They want a life for themselves. They want to make a life for themselves. That's all. Have a life. You can't do that on your own. You have to, be part of a community with goods, services, support. You're having a life. And you contribute to the community so other people can also have a life. So it's self-interest, collective interest, like this. Can't separate them. So, you see this, self-interest is something that capitalism emphasizes. And collective interest is something that socialism emphasizes. And they don't, we think of them as opposites again. We think of them as like this, they're not like that, but they are like that. Socialism and capitalism. I mean, you look at the history, you just look at, maybe the most successful countries in the world, successful societies in the world with the highest standard of living, etc. They were the Western democracies, and they are a combination of socialism and capitalism. They're all of them are. United States, we have socialism here. We have socialism, we have welfare, we have unemployment insurance, we have unions, we have Medicaid, Medicare, we have all kinds of socialist things. In the United States, and of course in Britain, and all the other Western democracies, there's a mix of capitalism and socialism, but it's not engineered, to find the best way of synergizing the two. That's where we have the capitalists against the socialists, and the socialists against the capitalists. We're right. No, you're wrong. We're right. Yeah, you're wrong. Well, none of them are right or wrong. It's that they're like this instead of like that. I mean, we saw Soviet Union collapse because it wouldn't budge from the Marxist-Leninist type thing. It wouldn't budge. It was like, anyway, it wouldn't budge. And poof, overnight, no more Soviet Union. It's iron-fisted, dictatorship. Poof, overnight. There's no more. It's amazing. It was amazing. And in China, the other great communist empire, what happened? Well, the Chinese communists, dyed-in-the-wool communists, some of whom, fought with Mao, looked at Marxism for after, what is it, like 30 years or so. We had Marxism for 30 years or so in China, and they looked at it and said, this just isn't working, it's not working. And this was like in the 70s, I think, they started to introduce free enterprise into their system, and they're, for better or worse, they're, doing pretty good. And we have there's this enterprise called Mondragon, started in the Basque country of Spain. Socialism and capitalism. They have a synergy of the two that's working very well. They're very successful. They're in all kinds of businesses. So this is not just a pipe dream. This is not just a fantasy. This works in the real world. So we have self-interest and collective interest, and we have to find the best way to work those together, to have them working together in a social system. So I guess that's enough for now. In subsequent videos, broadcasts, I will talk about how best to do that. How best to have self-interest and collective interest working together. Right? Okay, so that's it for now. See you later. Thanks for listening.